And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. Today's suggestion comes to us from Nazareth Hussein, who gives us the question of what is Patrick Star's Pokemon team? I do believe I've done SpongeBob already, so it makes sense to do his best pal Patrick. Patrick had a weird team, to say the least. Let's just start right into it. I mean, the immediate obvious mon that has to be on the team is a Starfish. The problem here is the only actual Starfish Pokemon that exist are the Staryu and Starmie line, as well as the Toxapeck and Mareanie line. Needless to say, Starmie being a Psychic type, at least in this case, makes no... I also never understood why Starmie was a Psychic type, to be quite honest. Maybe because it's kind of alien-looking, I guess. And the Mareanie line just makes no sense for Patrick. So, a standard Staryu, perfectly fine, perfectly easy, perfectly simple. But then we have to go well beyond that. We have to go to some defining traits about Patrick. And one of them, most certainly, is the fact that Patrick is a goddamn idiot. So I had to think of the dumbest Pokemon, literally like the lowest IQ Pokemon that actually exists. And even though it's a Psychic type, Slowpoke follows suit with that. It is just a very slow-witted, dopey Pokemon. Now, is it the dumbest Pokemon in the entirety of the series? Let me see here. Pokemon with the lowest IQ. I tried looking up the dumbest Pokemon, but that gave me just a whole bunch of personal lists. Let's see. Pokemon with the Pokemon with the lowest IQ. Let's figure it out. Least intelligent Pokemon. Let's see here. Scientists believe that essentially what Magikarp lacks in strength, they make up for their hardness and general survival skill. If anything, it can be considered the least intelligent. It's probably Slowpoke. Okay, so yeah, the general consensus still is Slowpoke is the dumbest quote unquote Pokemon there is. Plus, he's very round and pink, just like Patrick, so it makes sense. After that, though, is where we started to get into a little bit more nuance, or as much nuance as there is with the Patrick character. For example, he's also someone with a big appetite. He's kind of a glutton. He kind of can eat a huge amount in a massive meal, and he's tubby. So I knew I needed a Pokemon that could essentially eat a lot. In fact, half the team kind of makes up that, but in different ways. What do I mean by that? Well, to start with, I put Swalot on this team, which is basically just a giant living stomach. It can just swallow things whole and digest them with the acids in the stomach. And I didn't think about this until I started the video. It has a secondary meaning because he is a poison Pokemon, and Patrick and his relationships are kind of toxic. He is a toxic friend. Very much so. So I think that kind of works out in his favor. Also, obviously, we gotta add on our big tubby friend Snorlax. He is slow, he is cumbersome, he is lazy, he spends a lot of time sleeping, and he can eat a lot within a single meal. So it's a logical step, I think, for Patrick to have a Snorlax on the team. This also leans well towards Patrick because he does have a secondary function, but secondary part to his character in that he is physically masked. Well, he's not a fighter. Usually we've seen him be physically quite destructive and quite physically strong. While looking up Patrick in terms of his personality, all that, he has gone off the rails and just destroyed property because he was unhappy, like a little baby. So this can work in terms of him having some physically powerful Pokemon on the team. Speaking of which, the other mon that works if he's getting hungry and gets hangry is the hangry Pokemon itself, Morpeko. It's a Pokemon that literally has a type change when it goes into its hangry mode. And its Aura Whale ability changes type as well, or attack, I should say. It changes type as well. So it is certainly a mon that I think works because Patrick is someone who's also very much emotionally driven by his stomach. So I think this works well in Patrick's favor, I think. And it gives him a little bit of variety on the team, too, because right now he's got 2 Watermon, a Psychic, Poison Normal, and a Dark Electric. Well, let's round it out with another Normal-type Mon. Probably the laziest Pokemon there is, Slaking. Slaking, literally because of its True Run ability, only attacks every other turn, but is so powerful that if it didn't have that ability, outranks most legendaries in terms of stats. Its physical attack is that powerful, and HP and defense. It is a tanky Mon. So even with Tron, it can certainly take hits. And that's kind of how Patrick is. Not take out the Toon Force stuff. He is someone, because he's a starfish, is durable enough to take hits and keep going. He actually should be able to regenerate if he needs to. If you've ever watched the whole like Eldritch Horror of the Starfish kind of, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like an Eldritch Horror kind of SpongeBob comic where Patrick and the Starfish kind of rebel against all of Bikini Bottom, and it gets kind of weird and Cthulhu-y, but badass too. So I think, yes, Patrick even has a award for being the laziest individual in Bikini Bottom. So this, I think, works well in his favor. So this is the team I've created, and I'll give you my take when doing how well this team would do about if these two were fully evolved. If they were fully evolved, it'd be a Starmie and a Slowbro. Not a Slowking, definitely a Slowbro. But first and foremost, how balanced is the team? What are the types that this team is strong against and weak against? Well, in terms of what this team is weak against, there's far more weaknesses to exploit than strengths. It is certainly weak to electric types. It is certainly weak to grass types. As you have 2 Mon on this team that have water. 2 Mon on the team that are water, so grass and electric. You have 2 Mon on the team weak to bug with a dark and a psychic type in Slowpoke. You have 2 Mon on the team that are weak to ground types with Morpeko and Swalot, respectively. And you have 3 Mon on the team that are weak to fighting types with the 2 normals, Slaking and Snorlax, and Morpeko's being a dark type. Now, if this team were fully evolved, the only catch-22 on that would actually be that you would then have 2 Mon on the team that were weak to dark, thanks to Starmie gaining the Psychic type. 2 Mon on the team that are weak to Bug, gaining the Psychic type, and 2 Mon on the team weak to Ghost. So if anything, if Staryu was fully evolved, it would have better stats and be more useful, yes, but it does open the team up to more weaknesses. Conversely, though, you would actually gain some strengths if you did evolve the Starmie into if you evolve the Staryu into a Starmie, because the Psychic type would give you strength over poison, and psychic, which you'd have now 2 Mon there, not psychic, fighting, which you'd have 2 Mon there psychic types to exploit that. Otherwise, this team is really only kind of good against fire with 2 water types. It's good against ground with who's the one that's strong against ground again? 2 water types, duh. And 2 strong against rock. Otherwise, this team actually doesn't have a lot of crossover strengths, particularly because you have 2 normal types on the team, which obviously are not strong against particularly anything. So then the question becomes very quickly, how well would this team do in the games? With Kanto, you run into a problem with Surge as Slowpoke and Staryu. Slowpoke's going to go down immediately. It doesn't have the speed, and Staryu's barely going to get 1 hit in. So honestly, you may just stop at Surge because Swalot would be evolved by the time you're fighting Surge, but it doesn't necessarily have the stats to compete. Not to say it would lose guaranteed, and Staryu is fast enough to still get a hit or 2 in, but you're not really in a good spot to take on Surge here. After that, though, surprisingly, you won't have any real struggles with any of the other gym leaders. You won't struggle with Erica. You got a Poison and a Snorlax there. You're not going to struggle with Koga. You've got as weak as it is a Psychic type, another Poison, tanky Snorlax, and Morpeko. Morpeko alone would be problematic for Sabrina to deal with just because of the dark typing. Blaine, you should actually have no problem with. Honestly, you shouldn't struggle with anything until the Elite Four. And even if you had a fully evolved team, and that's a big if here, you're actually going to struggle with Bruno pretty badly. First off, if you're just going with this team right now, you're not beating Bruno. You're not beating Bruno. You have an under-evolved Staryu and a Slowpoke. You'll be lucky to take down just one of his Onixes. And then his fighting types are going to cleave through the majority of your team, with leaving really only a fighting resistant poison type who isn't even that strong. And then you can just throw an Onix. He can throw an Onix at it. If you fully evolved Starmie and Slowpoke, you probably would beat Bruno, just because you'd have 2 strong Psychic types on the team. And Slowpoke is tanky and Starmie is speedy. So if it were fully evolved, you could get past Bruno. But I think you stop at Bruno with this team. Even if you did manage to get past Bruno, Agatha actually wouldn't really be that big of a problem. Morpeko alone shouldn't be that big of a deal. And you can learn Dark-type moves with Slaking and Snorlax, and they're tanky and immune to Ghost-type moves. Lance, though, I think is where you just flat out stop. Your 2 weak mon are just going to go down completely, and then you're going to have to deal. You're going to be forward. You're going to be down 2 to 1 or 2 to 4 or whatever you want to call, however the terminology is. Point being, while Slaking and Snorlax can certainly put in some work and take down a couple of them, they're too slow to be able to manage, and I believe those Dragonairs do have Thunder Wave on them, so yeah, you are going to be in a very bad spot. So yeah, you can't be the champion of Kanto. Well, what about Johto? Surprisingly, I think you stop at Bugsy. Slowpoke's too slow. You're not going to be able to take down that Scyther with a Slowpoke. And Staryu, as fast as it is, just doesn't have the stats. So I think you're just stopped at Bugsy. Now, granted, if you did have, because it's a stone evolution, you can have a Staryu at any point in time in this journey, unlike other things that have to wait to evolve. So if you had a Starmie, would that change things? Well, you would certainly have a stat advantage at that point, because you are a fully evolved Mon, but you're still got to deal with that Scyther and that Fury Cutter. You won't have a type advantage against Scyther is the problem. And if he Swords Dance and Fury Cutters, which I don't think I think the anime gave him Swords Dance. But if he Fury Cutters and just keeps managing to land hits, your type, he has better physical attack than you do, and a stab advantage and type advantage. So yeah, no, I don't even think you get past Bugsy, and I don't even think you get past Whitney. Swalot's the only thing on that team you kind of have a little bit of hope with, and even then, it's not a lot. Now, you might be able to take down the Clefairy with just the Staryu, just because the Clefairy is weird. It spans Metronome, so anything can happen. But after that Milk Tank, if it starts getting a rollout on, it might just stomp out the Staryu instead of doing a rollout first, and then get the rollout going with the Slowpoke. I'm going to be honest, I think you're pretty screwed at Whitney as well. Now, if you, in theory, can get past that, you actually should be able to manage taking on Morty. Again, because you can, I believe, learn Crunch with Snorlax, which godsend move at that point. Then you have to deal with Chuck with his fighting type, and at that point, like 2 of your 3 big hitters are weak to fighting. The long and short of it is, no, you can't be the champion of Johto here. The way I'm now going to be doing this to shorten the videos just a little bit, to be sure we're not going like into the 25 to 30-minute range with these videos, is if there's 3 people in a row that you very well might not beat, then I'm calling it at that point. Speaking of which, going into Hoenn, you already are kind of in trouble when it comes to Brawlies, weirdly enough, because even though Slowpoke is a Psychic type, the only thing you have is Confusion, and again, you're going to be slower than his Mon. The Makuhita alone has got better stat lines than the Slowpoke. Now, the only thing it's got going for it is a resistance to fighting. The Staryu isn't going to last very long. It's not impossible, but I think it's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Watson's another example of, I think this is where you just freaking stop. I think you are done at this point. Because unlike with Surge, he also has a Magneton on his team, which has type immunity to your poison, which at this point would be your heavy hitter. And even if you have Body Slam on this thing, it's a Steel type. You're doing very little damage. So honestly, I think you're just stopped at Watson. And I don't even think you can get past Norman, which is only the 5th gym leader, which means you don't even have a Slack off to go against his Slack off. Or Slacking to go against his Slacking. So unfortunately, yeah, I think you just stopped at Norman at that point. Even if you hypothetically could get past Norman, and I don't think you can. Winona would still be difficult because her team is actually, Winona. I always remember, it's not Skyla, that comes later, but Winona. And she's the flying type gym leader. She's surprisingly got a very balanced team. The Pelipper is whatever, but the Skarmory's tough. That Altaria is legendarily menace. And then you got to also then deal with Liza and Tate, which you don't have a good team for that. And that's not even getting into the Elite Four, which again, Drake, you're done at Drake if you're lucky enough to get there. But the point being, you can't become the champion of Hoenn. Well, what about Sinnoh? You're done at Gardenia. That's it. You're done at Gardenia. A Staryu and a Slowpoke are not getting past that Rose Raid, no matter what. Like, you're just done. So there's really little point in me actually trying to explain why if you could get past that. Gardenia, you're just kind of done. And even if you could, Maylene in Diamond and Pearl, he's got a far more powerful mon on her team than you do. The only thing you've got going for you is a slight resistance with Slowpoke and a resistance with Swalot, and that Lucario has Metal Claw on it. So your Swalot's resistance don't mean jack. And it being steel means no poison type move is going to work on the damn thing. So I'm just going to say it right now. You're not becoming champion of Hoenn or Sinnoh. Now, to backtrack real quick, what if I did Starmie instead of Brawly? Well, if that's the case, if I do Starmie, you can definitely beat Brawly at that point, but you can't beat... I still don't think you're beating Watson. You're just not in a good spot to beat Watson. Even if you have a Psychic type move on Starmie, Steel type would be able to... Magneton's going to be able to resist that to whatever degree. That being said, would you then... Do I still think you could beat Norman if you did somehow manage to beat Watson? Because you'll be able to beat Flannery, no problem. Because at that point, you should be able to have Slowbro on your team, but you still won't have Slack King. It's a lot more possible here, but it's still going to be difficult, but not impossible. Which then brings us to the question of, okay, what about down the line? What about the Elite Four after that? Well, the problem then becomes you got to face a Dark-type Elite Four member first, who has 2 Grass Dark types of Cacturne and Shiftry, which means your Starmie isn't lasting long. Your Slowbro is not lasting long. And then you've got Slowmon that hit hard, but if they're hit with Stas moves or whatever like that, Ingrain, Leech Seed, all that, you're in trouble. And Morpeko is just kind of neutral because grass resists electricity. So yeah, I think you're actually in a bit bigger problem there than you were originally, because now you got 2 weaknesses added on, or multiple weaknesses added on with the Psychic type with Starmie. Granted, you'll have still better stat lines. I still think you're stopped at Drake, though. I still think you're stopped at Drake. And even if I gave you a Starmie in Sinnoh, again, I'm just going to quickly get up the move pool for a Starmie, because if a Starmie can learn something like Confusion early on, like when it evolves, there is an avenue, not a very big avenue, but an avenue where you could take down the Rose Raid. I just don't think it's very likely. Let's see here. All right, Starmies. Let's go with Staryu first. So, if I remember correctly, the Gardenia's Rose Raid. I'm not even bringing up Turtwig, by the way, who's a starter, and therefore even at base form, just a starter, like first stage of Star Evolution, is still got starter stats. So for a starter to show up, that early on is still very, very not good for you. Let's see here. So Staryu cannot learn any Psychic type moves until Psybeam at level 24, which is over the level cap I allow for a situation like this. So, but can Starmie learn anything like upon evolution? Because Stone evolutions generally don't learn moves naturally after that. I think that's like the trade-off they give you. Let's see here now. And the answer to that is no. It does not learn anything upon evolution, which means having a Starmie at this point would not help you really against Gardenia. So no, you would still lose in my opinion. What about Unova? Surprisingly, I think you'd be fine up until you got the clay. Once you got the clay, though, you'd have a big problem, because you have 2 mon on this team that are strong against clay, strong against ground types, but also not, because they're so under evolved. Now, with a full evolved team, you're beating clay no problem. 2 fully evolved, strong water types, and Psychic type added on there too, absolutely. Otherwise, you're kind of in trouble. Snorlax can only take so many hits despite its bulk. Then after that, Bryson, the Ice Gym Leader, wouldn't don't think it'd be that problematic, but still would be a issue. And I don't think you're getting past Drayden or Iris. Plus, I don't think you're even getting past Marlin in Black and White, too. And quite frankly, Marshall, the Fighting Type Elite Four member, you cannot take his team on with this team. Even if you fully evolved your 2 Psychic types, he's got Sucker Punch on most of those fighting types. And so you're not getting past Marshall, I don't think. Even if you somehow managed it, Iris's team is half dragon. You're not getting, but you have nothing strong against dragons on this team. Haxorus, Hydreigon, and then Druddigon, plus Aggron, Archeops, and Lapras. You just are not prepped to deal with that. Alder is a little bit more. I'd say Alder's even harder because you actually have 3 bug types on that team that can resist Psychic type moves. So yeah, you're not going to be able to be the champion of Unova. Kalos, honestly, I think you're stopped at Karina. This is just due to the fact that you have 2 underleveled Pokemon. It would be difficult for you to just get past Grant, but not impossible, just because you have type advantage there. But once you get to Karina, you have Machoke, you have Hawlucha, and you have Minfu. And honestly, it's the Hawlucha that's going to do you in. That thing's going to outspeed all 3 of these. Flying Press is a dual type attack, which I'm amazed they didn't do more of. Maybe that's something they'll do later down the road, more dual type attacks. But yeah, I think you're kind of stopped at Karina, to be honest. Even if you do get past Karina, you then got to deal with the majority of the Elite Four, which all have typings that you don't really have a strong strength against. Yeah, you got 2 Mon that are strong against fire. Even if they are fully evolved, I really wouldn't say you might be able to reach Flava, but that's it. You have no strength against Steel, no strength against Dragon, no strength against Water, save for 1 more Pekko, and that thing isn't going to last that entire fight. And then Diantha comes in, and right out the gate, you're going to be down 2 Pokemon immediately. Hawlucha honestly outspeeds everything on this team, so it's very possible half your team goes down before you were even able to take down Hawlucha. Because honestly, you're going to have to bring in that Swalot otherwise. And even then, that Hawlucha sword dances, it's fast, it hits hard. Even if it resists, you might be taken down completely by that Hawlucha. But if you have a fully evolved team, in the hypothetical you were able to make it this far with the fully evolved team, the Hawlucha shouldn't be a problem. The Tyrantrum would be a problem. You have no advantages against Tyrantrum here at all. Like nothing. So that Tyrantrum is probably going to cause some havoc. Same with Amora, because I have a feeling your Starmie or Slowbro would go down pretty quick to Tyrantrum. And so you don't have your water advantage there. You do have possible fighting moves you can use on either Slaking or Snorlax, but it's just not a good you're not in a good way, because you then still have to make way for the Gourgeist. You still have to make way for the Goodra and then the Mega Gardevoir. You're just not in a good position against Diantha. Galar, you stopped at Milo. This is just another scenario. Even if I gave you a fully evolved Starmie here, even if I did that, you're not at a level where you can have Side Beam, which means you don't have a non-water option, say for like Confuse Ray or Rapid Spin. You just are not in a position to win just because of your starter would star you. Even if hypothetically you could get past that, you still then got to deal with Nessa, whose team is just far more developed than your team is. You got to deal with Kabu, who, yeah, you have water types, but they're not under level, but they're under evolved. Stat wise, they just aren't going to be able to compete. Yeah, and that's 3 in a row, and that's not even getting into B or Alistair, who, because of the fighting and a ghost type, you're still going to run havoc on you. So yeah, this is not a team designed to handle Galar. Then finally, you have Paldea. Brassius is going to be your first big problem. You actually should be able to handle Katie, the bug gym leader, no real issue. Brassius, though, is a problem. Because of just the grass typing alone. Iono is, again, I think where you're going to be stopped, because both these are water types, both are weak to electric, and that's all she has, including the Miss Magius with the terraforming, or terrestrialization. So yeah, I think you're kind of done after Iono. If you somehow managed a lucky shot against Iono, I think Rhyme's a problem just due to the ghost nature of her team. team's not really that well handled to deal with Ghost. You have one strong Mon against Ghost, and some dark type moves on Snorlax or Slacking. And then I think Rika is where you kind of end. Just because while your two Mon that are strong against ground, you're not going to be able to use them. Now, again, if they're fully evolved, it might be a little bit different. The Starmie might be able to run through them. Okay, great. You might be able to get past Rika. You're stopped at Poppy because you have no strength against Steel on this team really at all. But without the evolution, you've then got your two Mon weak to ground. So really, against Rika, all you're using is is your Snorlax and your Slacking, and they're bulky and powerful, but slow and can only take so many hits before they go down. Ultimately, yeah, this is not a team that is designed to win in any way, quite frankly. But this is also just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. But until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll see you next time.